So, USC hosted some of the best defensive recruits in the country over the weekend.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day, whether you're watching the show on YouTube or wherever you want to download your podcast. Never forget the show is free, and never forget how much I appreciate your support. You can show your appreciation if you're watching on YouTube. Become a subscriber. It's quick, it's easy, it's free. Click that red subscribe button, smash that thumbs up button, and don't forget to hit the bell notification button. That way you don't miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions will apply. Over the weekend, I got to check out some 7-on-7 passing league, grassroots football, one of the local high schools in the LA area. And I was hoping to not only just see the 7-on-7 part of the competition, I was also hoping that the 5-on-5 big man competition that was going to be on Sunday the next day. I wasn't able to make it out to that. Nevertheless, I did not get to see them perform, but I did get to see the quarterbacks and the wide receivers in their environment for at least for a few hours. And then, I got to talk to a couple of 3 or 4 of the guys who were out there that played defense, trench line guys, defensive linemen. They were out there watching their teammates before they all headed on over to USC's junior day, there's USC's second junior day before the dead period kicked in. Now, if you followed me on Twitter at all, then you saw some of the guys that were out there that USC was interested in. I was taking some pictures and saying, hey, this guy's going to be over on USC's campus later today. So again, the day started watching 7-on-7, and then around noontime or so, they went and grabbed some lunch, and they were heading on over to USC to meet with the coaching staff, find out what USC is all about. Some of the guys actually went ahead of their teammates who were, playing the 7-on-7 games, and they were getting a little bit more of a personal one-on-one feel for the coaching staff. One of those players, Marco Jones. I was kind of looking forward to seeing him out there with his Cali Power teammates. I think he plays for that program, this grassroots program. But the 6'4", 215-pound linebacker from San Ramon Valley, he decided to head on over to USC earlier, just so he can get some one-on-one time without having everybody around. So no, I didn't get to meet him or see him in person, but I did get to speak with a class of 2025. He's committed to Texas. Defensive tackle Brandon Brown. He's from the state of Florida. I also got to meet and speak with Myron Charles, another big-time defensive lineman from the state of Florida, Port Charles, Florida, I believe. And also did the same with class of 2026 defensive line target, Deuce Gerald. Also saw, I think he's 2025 or 2026. I apologize. Top of my head, Jaylen McCoy. He's like 6'5", big kid. Really good dance moves. So again, didn't see him on the field, but these guys like to have some fun when they're out there with their teammates, and they were showing off some of their latest dance moves. And guys who are that big didn't move that fluid, not in the hips. It's amazing to watch. But what was really cool is all of these guys that were out there, they were really looking forward to hanging out with Coach Eric Henderson when they got to USC's campus. By the way, Coach Henderson He wanted a buddy of his on the staff, so USC went out and they hired Skylar Jones to be a grad assistant with the defensive line group. Most recently, he was with the Oregon Ducks and Coach Dan Lanning. He worked with Coach Henderson when he was with the Rams. In 2022, Eric Henderson was the defensive line coach for the Rams. Jones served as the assistant defensive line coach. Again, I mentioned last season, he was a defensive analyst for the Oregon Ducks, and he was working with their defensive line coach, Tony Tuioti. Oregon, if you like to follow stats, they finished number 11 in their rushing defense, and they were number 29 in the country as far as collecting sacks. This is what Skylar Jones tweeted out when he was announced as USC's, on being a member of USC staff. You wanted to get developed by the best D-line coach, or you can go get developed by the computer coach. #dogwork. So again, you know where he was just at. You know where he is now. So a little bit of a shot across the bow. In that tweet where he said you want to get developed by the best D-line coach, or you can go get developed by the computer coach, he was referring, obviously, to the Oregon coaching staff. And in the background of that tweet, you could see Eric Henderson, the Super Bowl trophy, and a big old fat Super Bowl ring. The one thing, every recruit that I spoke with, one thing they had in common, they were all looking forward to spending some time with Coach Henderson. And when you hear them talk about Coach Henny and what he can do for their futures, you kind of wonder, well, why aren't they all committed to USC right now? Well, some of these guys are making their way to junior day. Obviously, this is their first chance to see USC's campus, but also to meet him in person. So while they might be excited to talk about the chance to be coached up, the reality of it is some are going to, take their name, image, and likeness opportunity elsewhere, at least in the beginning. So the fact that these kids, some already committed to power programs with strong NIL programs like, Texas and Miami, the fact that they're visiting USC, this is the first step. Lots of time to get these guys back on campus for, their official visits or more unofficial visits. Junior days are when you kind of find out who's willing to consider USC for what USC has to offer besides just their NIL, besides just Eric Henderson. That's what these junior days are all about. Finding out, all right, let's invite that guy back. Kind of figuring out who's all about NIL and who wants, see bigger picture type of stuff. Excuse me. Here's some of the feedback that's starting to roll in from the second junior day. And you can catch all of this stuff over on wearesc.com. When you're done making Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day, then you head on over to wearesc.com because you're going to get a lot of VIP stuff that I really can't talk about here, but you can check out there. So I'll give you bits and pieces. If the name Dalen McCutcheon sounds familiar, it should. He's a legacy. Here's some feedback. Here's a quote from him. They went into deep detail of life after football, which is pretty important because football is only going to last so long. You need a degree to be able to get a job and be able to live out the rest of your life. I was really impressed because most schools would only talk about football and would say you can take these classes to get your degree. But USC goes deeper into that, end quote. 2025 edge player Chad Woodfork says, quote, USC was one of the best visits I've been on, end quote. He's from Humble, Texas, and he plays for Summer Creek High School. He's a 4-star player, and he visited USC this weekend. It was his first time in LA. Well, at least to USC's campus. He is the number 56 overall prospect and the number 6 edge player in the 2025 cycle, according to On3. Sam Spiegelman wrote this, at 6'5", and he's 230 pounds or more. Woodfork is a force setting the edge in the run and is enormously powerful and stout at the point of attack. His length and power are just a few of the reasons why the Houston area edge defender is what he described as a traitsy prospect that is just scratching the surface of his potential up front. So there you go. And he's also the number, according to On3, the 10th best player in the entire state of Texas. This is what Chad had to say regarding USC's defensive staff. The new staff is going to have the defense up there right for sure. USC is up there. That was one of the best visits I've been on in both. Now, it was just 2 weeks ago that Woodfork included USC in his top group of 9. I don't know why it doesn't 10, but it's 9. So with this visit, the Trojans will probably solidified themselves as contenders down the road. I saw Adoree Jackson's doppelganger, his twin. Not kidding you. Cornerback LaRue Zamorano. He plays for Centennial High School, power program out here in Southern California. Here's the difference between LaRue and Adoree. Adoree wishes he was 6'2", but you look at them in the face and you're going, whoa, identical twins. Here's my takeaway from Saturday. Seeing all these prospects up close, their size, especially these defensive linemen. Big, huge. Every year, these kids are getting bigger and bigger. And USC is getting serious interest because of the staff that Lincoln Riley went out and hired, put together. No doubt about it. You hear these guys talk. They're really excited about the potential for USC's future with the defense, especially with Eric Henderson at defensive line. And USC is getting serious interest because of Eric Henderson. And now you show that, you know what? Lincoln Riley said, I'm really serious about getting that defensive line fixed. I'm going to go get Skylar Jones. So that might not seem like a real significant move, but it is. Because these young men who are coming up, who are being recruited, they know who develops and who talks a good game. So that was what Skylar was referring to. A lot of coaches look great on the computer. A lot of coaches just want to coach you and do it behind the scenes. So here we are. Now we're going back into dead period. National Signing Day is Wednesday. But I wanted to give you a little bit of some feedback, some roundup of what took place over the weekend. 7-on-7 grassroots is back in season. Another junior day in the books, getting some feedback. And I'll have more for you throughout the week. But next up, signing day, Wednesday. And then you just keep rolling it with the recruiting season, winter workouts. In fact, I'm going to talk about that in the next segment. And then, as you see in the third segment, I got something I want to talk about, the All-Star Games. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster, and they do it for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even launched a feature that helps you write your job descriptions, making that process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right. You know, winter workouts, they've been going on for about a couple weeks now, and they're really heating up during the winter. A lot of the guys from the 2024 class, they're enrolled. And some of these freshmen are going to make an impact. Most of them won't. Some will, most won't. Some, what happens with freshmen is some start off a little slow, and then boom, all of a sudden, they're off and running, becoming a fixture for at least 3 years. Others, they're just born to kind of be great once they hit the field. So in this segment, I want to know, which freshmen can start in 2024. We know that freshmen can come in and make an impact, eventually see the field, make some plays. But which freshmen that are already enrolled can actually start? USC has 2 running backs returning. You have sophomore Quentin Joyner, and he is a sophomore. He appeared in 7 games. And you also have redshirt freshman Marion Peterson. He only appeared in 2 games. Quentin Joyner, 18 carries, 125 yards, 1 touchdown. I think he also had a reception. And then Marion Peterson, 2 games, and I think he had 2 carries. That was the extent of their action last year. We know that USC is bringing in Jaquavius Woody Marks. He's a senior transfer from Mississippi State. That leaves true freshman running back Brian Jackson, 6'1", 230 pounds. He's a wrecking ball. I talked about him last week. He was one of my favorite recruits of the week, and we're going to do more of that this week as well. And what I like about his game, he reminds me of another Lendale White type of running back. So on that note, I anticipate Brian Jackson having a legitimate shot at becoming a starting running back. First game of the year against LSU, I anticipate the senior, Woody, that experience, probably be lining up behind Miller Moss when they take on LSU. But again, Jackson has a chance to be a starter at running back in 2024. Maybe not the first game, but somewhere down the line. And not just because, injuries have, forced him into the situation. Because of his style, because of the way he's built. And also because he's enrolled. He has a good chance to make it happen in the fall. That gives him that head start. Look, it really doesn't matter what type of scheme and offense runs. Running backs can make an immediate impact, and then they can find themselves in a starting role. Last year, on defense, Jamil Muhammad, he eventually came in, seized the edge position. Well, he's back this year. But I guess my question is does he have the right size in Antonlynn's scheme to be, to play that rush edge position? Or, can a guy like Cameron Fountain, can he come in and start as a freshman? I fully anticipate Jamil Muhammad being on the field. I was one of his biggest supporters last year. If you watch me on the WeAreSC.com Inside the Trojan Huddle podcast, big, huge Jamil Muhammad fan. With that said, Antonlynn has said, he likes his defensive linemen to be bigger in size, so he doesn't have to substitute as much. Keep guys on the field. Cameron Fountain is at least 6'5". He's taller than Jamil Muhammad. Jamil Muhammad obviously has the experience factor, and that's going to keep him at that starting position, assuming he's starting. But can a guy like Cameron Fountain come in and eventually seize that starting role? Or will a bigger guy on the roster who's been around for a year, like Anthony Lucas, will he get the nod despite not doing anything to date so far? How about a linebacker? Will one of the newbies, maybe Elijah Newby, will he grab a starter's role? We saw last year that Tekka Curtis, they started a true freshman at linebacker. Eli Newby, is a freaky athlete. And he's been getting a lot of rave reviews from scouts who, kind of determine who's going to be a player, who deserves a 4-star, who deserves a 5th star. Both Newby and Cameron Fountain saw their rating shoot up in the final top 300 rankings that were released. Again, if you're an everyday viewer or listener of Locked on USC, you heard me talk about that on a previous episode last week. So outside of those positions, defensive line, linebacker, I'm not sure a true freshman that's enrolled or will be coming in with the 2024 recruiting class will be a starter this coming season. Not unless injuries just completely ravage the roster. I don't see it happening. But the 3 players that I mentioned have a really good shot, I think, of becoming a starter. Again, Brian Jackson at running back, just because I think his style would be a great complement to Lincoln Riley's passing game. You want to have a guy who can just keep pounding and pounding and pounding the rock, wearing down defensive lines. Linebacker, again, just because you've seen freshman linebackers see the field, not just at USC, but across the country. Outside of that, I think USC's returning roster will dictate the fact that, freshman, you're going to have to earn your time, and you're probably going to do it playing special teams. But we'll find out. Again, what do you know? What do you think? Let me know in the comment section. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, having a big bowl of chips, bunch of adult beverages, and just being left alone. Well, that's me on Super Bowl. I also love the commercials. It's a holiday vibe for me. It's football, it's food, it's football Thanksgiving. And FanDuel has a bunch of ways for you to end the football season with a W, or maybe 2 Ws, or maybe even 3 wins. Not only can you bet on who's going to win Super Bowl 58, you can also bet on how many points are going to be scored, who's going to score a touchdown. They've got a bunch of different ways you can bet over there at FanDuel.com. And if you're a new customer, if you join today, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets when your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. First, it was the bowl games. If you're not playing in the playoffs, you're playing in an insignificant bowl game, whether it's the Holiday Bowl or you name it bowl, it doesn't matter. If you're not playing in a bowl game that's hosting a playoff game, a lot of players they're not interested in playing anymore. Well, guess what? It's now showing up in the college all-star game realm. Yeah. College players are opting out of playing in the actual all-star games that they were chosen to be at. Now they're using these these platforms to get a week of practice in. They do it in front of, the NFL brass, GM, scouts, owners, head coaches, assistant coaches, and they're using these platforms like it was a NFL combine. I'm not sure I like that. Look, I understand the idea, players not wanting to play in these games because they want to minimize the chance for injury. Totally get it. But I think this is getting a little out of control. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it with the bowl games. I'm not sure I like this. Look, one player's self-perseverance is another teammate's chance to play more reps in these games. I get it. So, the players who are opting out not to play, they're doing it because, they're trying to minimize their chances of getting hurt before the NFL draft. Again, I get it. Ironically, though, that's a little bit, because that's being a little bit of selfishness being displayed, that's putting their teammates that are on these teams, they're saying, you know what? You go play. You go put yourself in harm's way. That's why I don't like that. They're putting themselves above their teammates. For example, Michael Penix, he's sitting out. He sat out the Reese's Senior Bowl game. That meant that Notre Dame's quarterback, Sam Hartman, played almost the entire game for his roster. This needs to be fixed going forward. Because I think there's a lot of guys out there who weren't invited, who might appreciate the chance to not only perform in the one-on-one repetitions during the week of practice, when they get to wear shorts and shells, no tackling is really involved, just, wide receivers running wide receiver routes against defensive backs, quarterbacks throwing different balls, running different routes. That's a lot of fun. But, those same players who weren't invited, not only would they like to do that, they'd probably also be willing to play anywhere from 10 to 20 plays in a live game all week. Marshawn Lloyd, Brendan Rice, they got rave reviews during their All-Star week of practices. On Friday last week, Marshawn Lloyd was named the top running back for his team, according to Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese Senior Bowl. The award was voted on by Lloyd's linebacker teammates and a top player from each position group for both teams on that roster. ESPN's Jordan Reed had this to say about Lloyd. Running back is one of the hardest positions to stand out in when participating in these all-star games. But the most consistent of the bunch has been USC's Marshawn Lloyd. He really impressed during the team portion of practice, displaying burst, and he had a cutback move at one point that resulted in a lot of excitement from the crowd. So, after he's earned everyone's respect, Marshawn decided, I'm not going to play in the game. Again, it's his choice, but I don't think it's a good look. How should NFL people look at that? USC, Marshawn Lloyd wasn't the only one. USC had two players that were repped at that game. Brendan Rice was the other one. Rice also had a great week of practice. If you watched any of my episodes of Locked on USC last week, I frequently mentioned Brendan Rice, and I also mentioned Taj Washington having great weeks of practice repetitions in their respective All-Star bowl games. Brendan Rice, Marshawn Lloyd was at the Reese Senior Bowl. Taj was at the Shrine game. But Brennan did the same thing that Marshawn Lloyd did. Had a great week of practice, burning everybody he went up against, and then decided he didn't want to play in the game. It's not just USC players that I'm picking on. Others as well chose not to play. And for various reasons, whether it was, if you're injured, I get it. You shouldn't play in the game. A lot of these guys weren't injured. So here's some other names who did not participate in the game after they spent the week impressing the NFL GM, scouts, et cetera, et cetera. How about UCLA's defensive lineman Leatu Latu? Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr., Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson, Oregon offensive lineman Jackson Powers Johnson, Oregon State offensive tackle Taliese Fuaga, North Carolina State linebacker Peyton Wilson, Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell, Western Kentucky wide receiver Malachi Corley. Again, these guys, if they were hurt, fine, don't play. But again, this just feels wrong. I'm not a fan, and I really hope this issue gets addressed for next year. If you're selected for these types of all-star events, you participate in all the events, unless you're hurt. But then that's probably going to open up a whole nother Pandora's box of, who's hurt, who's not hurt, who's saying they are. Again, like I said, if I'm an NFL general manager or in charge of player personnel, I'm going to red flag players that do this. It's not a huge red flag. I'm not waving around going, don't do that. Don't draft that guy. But I do question a little bit of their competitiveness. Whether or not they can be a good teammate in certain situations. Am I being a little harsh? Over dramatizing this? I don't know. You tell me. I just think back to last year's NFL Combine, and then I think of Andrew Voorhees finishing off a bench press. Kind of like I finish off a beef dip sandwich from Felipe's original. He went up there with a torn ACL and said, I'm going to finish this. I brought up Philippe's original, the beef dip, because that was my reward after watching 7-on-7 on Saturday before I headed on over to the Galen Center to watch the USC men's hoops team finally get on the winning side of the ledger. They broke their 6-game losing streak. They beat the Oregon State Beavers 82-54. That was fun to watch. I'll talk more about that game on tomorrow's episode of Locked on USC. We're already gone well past what I wanted to here. I'll be back with more tomorrow, more junior day feedback, talk a little bit more about the men's hoops team. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.